Hello my fellow bassists. Welcome back to the Playing with Music Theory course. Today I'm going to show you the power of triads and seventh chords, how to learn them in every single key, and how to actually use them in bass lines. Triads and seventh chords are the basic building blocks of basically most rock, pop, metal, and a lot of popular music genres, so it's really important that you get these chords really ingrained into your brain and your fingers. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which notes to play no matter what chord gets thrown at you, and you'll be able to create bass lines much more quickly and effectively. So without further ado, let's get started. So like I said in the first music theory video, the root note is the most important note of the chord, especially for us bassists. It's the note that lays the foundation for all other notes of the chord, and without it, the music sounds kind of unanchored and just a little bit confusing. So if you're ever in any doubt as to which note you should play on any given chord during a bass line, just play the root note. Your next safest bet is the fifth, mostly because most chords that you see are going to use the perfect fifth, which is just 2 frets up and 1 string higher than the root. So over in the key of C, you've got the root here, and then 2 frets up and 1 string higher, you get G. You can also play the fifth by using the same fret but 1 string lower than the root. So again, if we're in C, then you can play the fifth like this. There is just one chord in every key that uses the flat fifth, but we'll get to that later. You can actually write some pretty decent bass lines using only roots and fifths. Check this one out. Even though that sounds perfectly fine, you should absolutely have the ability to spice things up more than that, and that's where the third of the chord comes in. Every chord in a given key has either a major or a minor third, unless the chord symbol specifically tells you not to play the third. To play the major third, you just take the root, so we'll do C again, and you just go 1 fret lower and 1 string higher. So you got C, and then the major third is E. To play the minor third, it's very similar. You just take the root and you go 2 frets lower, but 1 string higher again, like this. So now I've introduced you to 3 notes that make up every chord in a key: the root, the third, and the fifth. Chords that use these 3 notes are called triads, and as bassists, it's absolutely essential to know these like the back of your hand, because about 80% of the notes that you play in most styles of music in the bass lines is one of these notes. Here's a bass line I wrote that only uses notes from the triads. So now you can hear that the bass line is a bit more interesting and complex than the one that only uses roots and fifths. But since there are different types of triads, you might be trying to figure out how you should know when to use which one. Well, the good news is that there's only 3 triads that you need to remember, and then it's just a question of moving them around the fretboard. The first triad is the major triad, which uses the major third, as you could probably guess. Then you have the minor triad, which uses the minor third. And finally, we have the diminished triad, which uses the minor third and the flat fifth. So as you learned last time, every key has 7 scale notes in that key, and each of those notes has a triad that you can build on top of it. It's incredibly helpful to be able to play each of these triads and know them like the back of your hand, so that when you're reading a chord chart or you've figured out a chord progression, you know exactly which notes go with each chord. For example, in the key of E major, here are all of the triads. But it's not enough to just know the triads in E major. You want to know the triads in at least a few keys, and that's exactly what this next exercise is designed to help you with. See if you can play along with me. As always, if that was too fast, feel free to use the playback controls to play it at half speed. Also, if you want to become a complete grandmaster of your fretboard, check out the Basecamp Patreon where you can get this same exercise but in all 12 keys. If you play this exercise a couple of times every day for a week, when you see a chord chart or you figure out a chord progression, you're going to be able to figure out a good bass line for it much more quickly. Alright, there's just one more thing to add to all of this, and that's seventh chords. A seventh chord is exactly like a triad but with one extra note. That extra note is called the seventh, and it can either be a major seventh or a minor seventh. A major seventh is 1 fret up and 2 strings higher than the root. So if we've got C as our root, then the major seventh is B, which is like this. And the minor seventh is very similar, but instead of 1 fret up, it's the same fret, but also 2 strings higher. So in C, it's B flat, which sounds like this. Using the major and minor sevenths gives you another tool at your disposal for writing interesting bass lines. Here's that bass line that I played earlier using just triads, but now I'm going to add some major and minor sevenths to it. So there's 4 types of seventh chords that are found in each key. The first type is the major seventh, which sounds like this. Then you've got the dominant seventh, which sounds like this. The minor seventh. And the minor 7 flat 5, which is also sometimes called the half diminished. Just like triads, each key has a seventh chord that can be built upon each note of the scale. For example, here are the seventh chords in the key of E major. And just like triads, you should know these chords in as many keys as possible, so here's an exercise that will teach you a few of them. Just like with the triads, if you want to gain total mastery of your fretboard, head over to the Basecamp Patreon where you can get this same exercise but in all 12 keys, as well as access to hundreds of exclusive lessons, practice videos, tabs, and a whole lot more. Alright, that's it for today. I know that these exercises are maybe not necessarily the most exciting, but they are incredibly helpful if you really want to know your fretboard incredibly well and be able to create bass lines quickly. Hopefully this lesson helps you learn some music theory in a way that you can actually apply to your playing. Thank you so much for coming here and learning with me, and I'll see you in the next lesson.